So what does my schedule look like? We're going to go through this and how you guys can time block, and I literally am scheduled for about every single hour of the day. And I know that doesn't sound fun to a lot of people, but for me it takes stress off. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I can prioritize the things every day that have to be done. Because you guys know in real estate, I had this happen to me yesterday. A major problem came up, and what do you do for the next couple hours? You're working on a major problem. And so as you're working on the major problem, everything else that you were planning on doing that day, or maybe you wanted to get in touch with this person or follow up with this person, or you've got this inspection looming or whatever, that goes by the wayside. So I have actually factored time into my schedule to deal with problems and to catch up on communication, because it will happen every day. And the more you do, the more you will come across. And you kind of start feeling like you're always dealing with problems. But you become a very good problem solver. And that's why I think the more you guys can do it and the less stressed you can get about it and the less you take it so personally, and we talk about this on the team all the time. I have buyer's agents who will call and, this has just happened, and oh my gosh, and this is the worst thing ever, and they are in absolute panic mode, and sometimes it is the worst thing ever. But if you can't take a step back and say, okay, you know what, you didn't just go out and buy the car, they did. You know, you didn't get into a situation where it's not your fault that the house is going into a short sale situation or whatever, but you were here to be able to help them out of it. So just remember that some of those things are, you know, the most important things. You can't take it personally. You were there to help. You didn't cause it. So we'll go over time blocking. I will tell you the one thing I do every single week is I schedule my kids first. So my kids' appointments go into my planner first every single week, and I know when all the practices are. And you know, I do have 2 boys that are always in sports. And Joy and I were just talking the other day because her little guy plays with my little guy a lot, and they're on different teams this year, and we're like, we can't let that happen again. Because we've helped each other out so much with carpooling. But you know, I want you guys to understand that I am that busy with my kids. You know, they are why I got into this business. They come first, and my husband too. And he's been a little bit easier because he's worked nights for so long. I don't have to, you know, I don't have to worry about doing dinner. Well, I wasn't going there. I just meant like being around the house and stuff. Lord have mercy. I always count on y'all. But anyways, I'm just saying, you know, I am out usually at least 3 nights a week, if not 4 nights a week with practices. And I have to do listing appointments at least 2 nights a week to be able to fit in all of my sellers who need to have evening listing appointments. But I've also found that if you ask to do a very early morning listing appointment, quite often people are willing to go in late. If you've already been booked up, that was one of the things that worried me so much, is saying, and this happened to me this week, it happened to me last week, I have all of my listing appointments set. And so if you have 5 or 6 listing appointments already scheduled for the week, it's really hard to fit in 2 more listing appointments. And there's some people who that house has to go on the market that next day or in a couple of days. It's always an emergency. So I leave a couple emergency appointments, and then otherwise they're just gonna have to kind of work with me on their schedule a little bit. And people are willing to do that. So I always schedule family first, and then I block out my appointments for when I plan on doing listing appointments. And I know going into the week, so that if somebody calls me, I say, okay, great, how's Wednesday at 6:30? And I normally block out 30 minutes of drive time for where I am, and you guys probably have to just for traffic. Probably like an hour, probably just more. But a lot of times I'll try to do 2 or 3 a night. So I just go from one to the other, and I try to group counties if I can. If I don't, then I'm all over the place. But it works, and it's organized, and that gives me the time that I need. And anytime I get off that schedule, which I do sometimes, everybody does, I pay for it. Database. Do you guys have a database that you're using? And I'm sure almost everybody here does, because AveryHess is great about explaining and having access to databases, teaching you guys how to use databases. Use it. Because again, if you are thinking of eventually having a business that you're going to sell, you're going to have a business that you can show. And that's going to very much be in your database, because if somebody steps in for you, they need to have all the information there. It needs to be all central. Systems. Do you have a listing system for activities before you put a home on the market, once it is on, and then once it is under contract? So we have a system, and we know that each time this step happens, then we have this step, and then this step, and then this step. And it really does make things run much more smoothly. And that's what people say to me all the time, well, you know, you have all this inventory, you have all these buyers and all these sellers, like how can you do all of those, and how do things not fall through? Well, we have systems. And when we can run those systems effectively, they work great because we just do one thing after another. We also have a group of people, like I said, establishing that professional network where I have 2 particular photographers that we use, and one is really our primary, so when he gets booked, we know who our backup is. Direct access to them all the time, and work out with your vendors. So like some of our vendors we've had some conversations with where it's like, hey guys, you're gonna get a lot of business from us. We need to make sure you get back to us as quickly as possible. We need to make sure that you're giving us great value, things like this. I mean, you guys work on those networks. They're really, really important. They will help in your systems. Because for instance, when we get a home inspection addendum, the first thing that we're pretty much doing is getting a home inspection addendum estimate for our clients. So I know what I'm negotiating, because I don't know if this little plumbing thing looks like it's going to be $50 and then I get an estimate it's $400 and I'm like, oops. I don't want that. I need to know what I'm negotiating for my clients. So that's part of our system. I have a contractor who I send the addendum to and I send the home inspection to, and he estimates off of that and he honors his prices. So again, I can give that to a seller and say, okay, well, this one looks like it's going to be pretty costly, guys, or he actually needs to come see it in person. He can't just go off of what they're stating here or what have you. But again, it's part of this system and it's part of what makes things effective. Do you have a system for activities while you're working with a buyer, and then again, once they are under contract? And that can be like a 5-point plan, a 10-point plan, however you want to do it. But you guys all have different things that you do with buyers. You're going to try to sit down and do your buyer's interview. You're then going to go through and really learn more about them. You're doing this type of, your listing program. You're sending them your mobile app. You're then doing this amount of contacts. You're then, you know what I mean? You have to have that plan so that each buyer, when you go through, even if you just make a checklist for each one, you can go through and know that you've done all the most important things and that you can continue to keep up with them. I was challenged to use it, and it wasn't until I tracked, and what I did first, and I'll tell you guys this, track what you're doing. So don't schedule yourself yet. Track yourself for a few days and write down what you've done each hour. And that was what I was challenged to do, was to sit down and say, okay, from 8 to 9 I did this, from 9 to 10 I did this, from 10 to 11 I did this. And when I actually really looked at what I was doing versus what I needed to be doing, I was kind of in that whole 80-20 thing that we were talking about. I was not in 80 as much as I thought that I was. So if you track yourself first and get an idea of your habits, your habits where you can improve some things, where you want to take more time for yourself or what have you. Effective systems and processes that will help you to become more efficient. So your daily schedule, how many of you guys have a daily schedule where you know the days during the week what your schedule is, what you're going to be doing throughout that day? Okay, good. So you guys are doing pretty good with that. So I would challenge you to build in the times of things that you have to get done. How many of you guys have a set time for prospecting every day? Great, good. So there's only a couple people that raise their hand, and that's totally fine, because that is typically the way that we do it. And a lot of times we have good intentions on prospecting, and we kind of prospect off and on throughout the day. But if you schedule that into your day, then you can accomplish it. We're going to go through that. And one of the things that I want to say is prospecting has to always happen, even when you're busy, because that's the hardest time to prospect, is when you're busy. But one day you're not busy. And when you have not been prospecting, you're now playing catch up. And in our business, catch-up is 30 to 90 days in the future. It's not right away. You can't all of a sudden catch up and then get a check in a week or two. You're getting a check in 30, 45, 60, 90 days. That's if you guys want consistent income and you guys want to make that salary, you have to prospect. And people hate that word, and I get it. It's not always my favorite thing, but do what you enjoy doing. Turn it into something that you don't mind doing, but you have to schedule in. So what daily activities do you need to do to be successful? I have to prospect. I have to prospect every single day. It doesn't matter that I've been doing this for 15 years. It doesn't matter that I have a whole lot of houses on the market. It does make it easier when I have a good day and I get a couple phone calls of, hey, so-and-so, just told me to give you a call, you need to sell my house. That happened the other day, and I was like, yes, I had 3 calls in a row, which was really, really exciting to me, all from Sphere people. And part of me was kind of like, all right, well, I kind of got that done today. But in reality, does talking to them count as prospecting? Not really. But I still have to reach out, because there's going to be plenty of days where I don't get 3 phone calls a day of saying I need to sell my house. And as the market shifts and the market changes, if you are doing this religiously, you guys are going to protect yourself from some of the fluctuations and changes. So 2007, 2008, I guess, I was really lucky because I started in 2003. So I started when it was really good. I started when I actually was at a seller's home, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and we'll go over our contracts because I listed it Friday. And so I did. I went back Saturday morning, and I remember sitting on the floor putting 10 contracts out. And we're like, okay, which is the best price, which is the best financing, which is the best date, which is, because the market was just like that. I mean, it was crazy. I've also been in it in the middle of everything going really, really bad. And that was probably a very big blessing, because I think for those of us who did and who have sustained it, what did we learn? And you learn how to do real estate. Because when it gets really hard out there, there's always people who have to buy and sell. You just have to find them. In any market, no matter what it is, whether rates go up to 7, 8, 9%, people are gonna need to buy and sell. So is it gonna be harder to find people sometimes? Yeah. 2007, 2008, 2009, those were, I hear it, like, those were some really hard years. But those were some of the years where I grew my business the most, because to me, it was sitting down and saying, well, I don't have 4 listings that are gonna sell every month. So if I'm gonna do that, I better have 20 listings. I can't have 10 listings anymore, because not enough of them are gonna sell for me to have income. So if I'm going to have, 4 listings sell, and I need to go and get 20 new listings, then I need at that point to talk to 25 people, and I need to, so do you see what I mean? So okay, that's a big goal. Like, how am I gonna find those people? Well, there's plenty of ways to go find those people. So what daily activities do you need to do to be successful? Just make sure you guys know what those are. It's your communication, it's your prospecting, it's your follow-up. Follow-up is so incredibly important, and it's one of the easiest things to let go by the wayside is follow-up. You have to work in your business 80% of the time and on it 20% of the time. That's kind of like eating good 80% of the time, not eating good 20% of the time. So what are inactivities? Prospecting, listing appointments, buyer interviews, showing properties, writing contracts, negotiating offers. Anything that puts you in direct conversation with a client or potential customer face-to-face is working in your business. How many times can you get wrapped up working on your business? And you feel like you're working, because you are, but business planning, marketing, social media, how many of you guys can go to check Facebook to talk to a client, and an hour later you're like, oh. That can happen. I mean, that's how social media is. So when you're working on your activities, those are important. I have a business planning meeting with myself every single week. It is something I implemented this year. It was something that I recognize that if I don't schedule in, I don't do. I have reports that come that Joy gives me twice a month, so I know where all of our numbers are. I keep a weekly tracking report, so I know right now how many listing appointments I've done. I know how many listings I've taken this month. I know how many I need to go on and how many more I need to have. I know how many buyers, agents, activities that we need to be doing, presentations, contracts, all of that, because it's in front of me. So it's in a place where I've been able to put it so that I can check it. And I'll tell you, January did not start off great for me at all. Normally January is off to the races. And, and I will tell you, the first listing of this year I did not get. And it I was so upset. Because I was like, oh my God, I hope that doesn't mean this is how the year's gonna go, Right off the bat I went down into a rabbit hole. And I'm telling you guys, it can happen to anybody, right? And I didn't get that listing because my office wasn't around the corner like the other office was, and that was the reason why they chose the other agent, even after they'd been on the market for 90 days and hadn't had but 2 showings, and the whole time I was there and I was asking them about it, they're like, oh my God, nobody said anything about that, oh my gosh, nobody's offered that, oh my gosh, I totally see how, I thought it was done, but they had to meet with somebody else, and I have a good closing, but I'm still not that pushy person to make them sign while I'm sitting there. It just doesn't work for me. I've gotten much better, but it doesn't still work for me. So gosh darn it, if that other person wasn't around the corner, and just so you know, the house is still on the market. Not that I wish that for them, I'm just saying. But what I'm saying is
sorry, not sorry.
Right. So halfway through the month, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I had not come close to starting to make my goals. So I will tell you, and I did. I started to have this oh my God, maybe 2017 was my best year. Well, I did.
I know, but it's that feeling of panic. You're going, this is, oh no.
Exactly. So what I'm trying to make you guys know is that happens to all of us, So So I went back to my plan, and that's why having a plan is so important. So I went back and I said, okay, this is how many listing appointments I have. So I got my prospecting to 2 hours a day. I have a thing that my team calls 555. We make at least 5 phone calls, 5 texts, 5 emails or Facebook messages every day. If you do that every day, you've got 15 people a day. So you've got 75 people a week. It seems little, and it's very easy, bless you, not to do. So set aside that time, and in your prospecting, at least get 555 done, or write 5 notes. I mean, whatever it is, but it is getting in front of that many people that many times, because it might just be a follow-up to a past client. It might just be reaching out to somebody on your phone. I go through my contacts on my phone all the time. Who haven't I reached yet? Who haven't I talked to lately? And I just, okay, how are you? I haven't talked to you guys in a little bit. How's the new house? Or, oh my gosh, I saw someone broke their leg on Facebook, whatever. You know, you guys have plenty of reasons to reach out to people now. Just make sure you're doing it. But I go through my contacts all the time for my 555, because sometimes I just I don't know who to call today or who to talk to. Your reminder is right there. So again, your on activities are super, super important, but your in are the most important. So sometimes you have to up those. If you're not making those goals, up it. You know, just make sure you know that you're making as many contacts. And I will tell you, I ended January making my listing goal, making my listing appointments, and my listings taken goal. We had listing sold goal done because I had busted my butt at the end of last year. So I had enough listings that sold in January. And that's the other thing. You can have some of those things going, I'm like, wow, well, this is going really, really good. In the meantime, I'm watching all my inventory go under contract. I'm like, ooh, I need to, add some more inventory over here. So just, really define those activities and make sure that you guys aren't, I know when I was brokering, some of the hardest parts was working on, you feel like you're working in, but you're not, and it takes away from the other part of it. So time blocking. So this is what we've been talking about. You guys can go online and get a time blocking calendar. You guys can email me and I'll email you the time blocking calendar. I mean, it's really very simple. It's like 7 to 8. I mean, it's easy, but it's broken down into 15-minute segments. So how do you manage your schedule and your time? This is one of the most important things in real estate, and I know it seems elementary, but it's not. Do you ask your clients when they would like to meet, or do you suggest days and times? How many of you guys are like, oh, when would you like to meet? When would you like to get together? What works for you?
50%.
I still find myself doing it sometimes. I get out of my own habit of really trying to structure my time, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, so Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And now I'm like, oh, I gotta find somebody to pick up Eli, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And I'm like, darn it, why didn't I just say how's Wednesday at 5? So again, if you suggest your days and times, you're in control of your time, you're in control of your calendar.